All right, good. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Knucklehead Chronicles podcast. It is your man, the guru, Terry, whatever you want to call me, Terry Guru, whatever. This is episode 11 of the origin, my personal life story. So a lot of people don't understand, when I say the origin, I mean where I came from, my origin, what made me who I am today, all the trials, tribulations, the heartbreak, all that. And so this is episode 11. Now, what I'm going to do in episode 11, I'm going to take a break from the story today on this episode. What I want to do is give you a recap, catch you guys up, put it on the first 10 chapters or the first 10 episodes, because, if someone is coming in and has never heard an episode and they come in, let's say on chapter 9, they will have to go all the way back to chapter 1 and start listening from there. So what I'm going to do in this episode today, episode 11, is I am going to give you a recap up to chapter 10. All right. So let's get into it. But before we get into that, let's get into this real quick. Somebody please tell me why President Trump is still having rallies. Former President Trump. Why is he still having rallies? I don't understand it. This man, was the worst president in American history, right? This man stole documents from the White House, and he is still thinking that he can run for president in 2024. Now, I could have sworn that there was an order or some kind of executive thing to where if you steal anything from the White House, that he has disqualified himself from running again because he stole from the White House before. So I heard that was a story. So I'm trying to figure out, why is this man still holding rallies? I mean, I'm on TikTok and I see some folks that are posting his video when he was in South Carolina running this big old rally. Like, don't people understand? Can't people just read? I don't understand that at all. All right. But that's just, I want the people. If you follow Trump, that's your business. If you're a Trump supporter, that's your business. I don't care either way. But I'm just trying to figure out why in the world this man's still trying to run for president and knowing federal law says he can't. So let's stop all that. There's no hope. He's not coming back. He's not going to be president again. Just move on. It makes my heart sick just thinking about it. All right. Let's get into episode 11. Like I said, this is a recap. This is a recap of the first 10 chapters of the story, right? Like I said, if someone who just popped in here, I'm not sure who that is. If you've never listened to an episode of the Knucklehead Chronicles and you are wondering what in the hell the origin is, I'm tell you what it is. Okay, like I said before, the origin is my story, where I came from. My story starts at the age of 16, 17. Okay, well, 15, because I became a father at 16. That's neither here nor there. So I might be younger, 14 or 15 years old. And I remember walking in, just to give you a quick recap. I remember walking into my mother's bedroom one Saturday morning, and I was telling her about this young lady that I had a crush on in high school. Now, I'm from a small town in North Carolina. You know those stories where, it's a one-horse town. Everybody knows everybody. It's like that. And I had a crush on this young lady. And I was telling my mother how excited I was about this young lady that I met, that I had a crush on. So I'm talking, I'm telling her what's going on, and she stops me in mid-sentence, and she says, "Hey, baby, what's her name again? You tell me, what's her name again?" I told her name, and she's like, "You can't date her." I'm like, "Why can't I date her, Mom?" And I was like, "All right, tell me why I can't date her." "Oh, well, because, she's your stepsister or half sister." And I'm like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" And so, mind you, my mother was married. I had a brother, and the man that she married, I thought he was my dad too. But come to find out that day that he was not. When I tell you that thing crushed me 10,000 times. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, why would you not like tell me that? You know? So at 15 years old, I'm devastated. You know, my mother tells me that the girl that I'm crushing on, I can't crush on her no more because she's my sister, right? And the man that's her father was actually my father. I'm like, you can't do this to me. You can't say this and just drop it off. So I remember my mom being, you know, she was very had the whole shame thing happening, and she was like, I just don't know how to feel about it. I wanted to tell you, but you know, I want you to be a little bit older before I told you. That's okay. You know, I can understand that. But I got to tell you, at this point in the game, I rebelled against everything. I was upset about everything, and it didn't matter, right? So what I did, calling myself getting back to her, you know, getting back with her, I started dating this young lady. You know, I wasn't sexually versed. I had no idea. I never had the birds and the bees talk with my mother and father. And I had sex with this young lady, and, you know, it was good. And, you know, we conceived a baby. You know, we were both in high school. She was a junior. I was a sophomore. And we conceived a baby together. Which was the hardest thing because I knew nothing about sex. I knew nothing about being a parent. All of that. I kind of, I patterned my parenting like my father did me, absent, right? So after that, I went through the whole thing, and you know, my baby was born. My oldest girl was born in 1992. Okay, she was born. I did the best I could as a father, as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old father. I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and that started the trek that my life went. I went down this trek for a long time, you know, being blind, doing things that I didn't have any business doing, you know, just making really, really bad decisions about my life. So, you know, of course, at this young age, I'm on court-ordered child support at this point, and I'm washing dishes at a grocery store in their restaurant department, and it was just really, really hard for me. I barely finished high school. I finished high school. I graduated. I went off to the military, which was just one of the weirdest decisions I've ever made. And I don't knock people that are soldiers. I'm there for the troops and the soldiers. I respect them. It just wasn't for me, right? And I went in there under the wrong pretense because I didn't go in there to, you know, fight for my country. I wasn't patriotic like that. I was a sophomore. The summer of my senior year is when I went down to the National Guard and signed up because I wanted money. I wanted a check. I wanted to go and be a weekend warrior and get this money. Because I was paying child support and everything. So I signed up. I graduated. I left high school in 1993. I got on a plane. We graduated June 9th. And I was on a plane to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, in July of 93. So I go to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to my boot camp. I absolutely, totally destroyed boot camp. I put forth no effort at boot camp. And then I ended up not finishing. I went to the medical department. They told me, you know, hey, you got mildly flat feet and you have a choice. You can go home and you can stay and try to rough it out. Now, if it was regular Army, it might have been a different situation, but it wasn't. It was National Guard. So I was like, okay, I'm going home. Now, at this time I had a little girlfriend. Her name was Bridget, you know, a little girlfriend who was a couple of years younger than me. But, you know, so I get on the bus. You know, the one thing about the military, and I said this in chapter 1, one thing about the military is that they will fly you out first class, baby. But if you don't make it, they busting you back to wherever you came from. You know what I'm saying? So that's what happened to me. They put me on a bus, bought me a bus ticket, and they put me back on the bus, and I went back to North Carolina. Now, at this time, you know, I'm really distraught. I'm still mad at my mother. I completely and utterly failed at boot camp or in the military. Made a whole mockery. It was a sham, and I was a dad. I didn't get to see my daughter, and it was a mess, So after high school, the first couple of 3 years out of high school, I kind of just limped through life. I kind of just limped through life and was like, I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard to explain. And so in 1996, or 95, I'm sorry, 95. And again, those 4 or 5 years out of high school, I just limped through life. So 1995, my cousin calls me up and says, "Hey, I got somebody that you want to meet." Because I was single, I was just kind of living life. I wouldn't call it living life. I was really struggling through life at this point. And so she called me up and she says, "Hey, I got this girl you want to meet." So I go meet her. She didn't tell me that this young lady had got stood up at the altar the weekend before she met me. So she was just, amped up by getting married. And so she goes, we meet, and because I was so gullible and so young and I just didn't know what I was doing, and it was just, all this stuff was new to me and it was happening so fast and all that jazz. We got together, we did the deed as it were. And, I call myself falling in love with this lady. Now she already had a son, and it was just us three, And so we tied the knot in 96 in my first marriage. It was a complete and utter disaster, disaster. And I'm not, and I know she's probably gonna listen to this. And one thing I did have for her is I had extreme love for her, but I just did not know how to handle my business. And that's the theme. If you listen to any of the episodes on Knucklehead Chronicles, is that was the theme. My theme was I had no idea what I was doing. I just kind of muffled through life. That's what I did. And I destroyed my life. I destroyed her life. And it was just terrible. And we struggled, just like most marriages do, fighting about money, not having enough of it. There was a couple times, we got our first car. It was a Pontiac Grand Am. Never will forget it. 93 Grand Am. And it was just a struggle. And then we were living in this duplex, which back in my hometown, we living in a duplex. The struggle was real. I was still sleeping with my baby mama. Still being physical with her, still doing whatever I wanted to do outside of that. And it was just crazy. And we went ahead and got married, and we struggled. Like it was beyond nuts of the struggle. So we tried to muddle through. She got pregnant. And this is my second daughter. We got pregnant, and we didn't have anything. We had nothing, absolutely nothing. So we had her. One of the biggest stories that came out of this chapter in my life, I'm gonna kind of run through it real quick because I'm gonna run low on time. So we're living separately at this point. We had already broke up and living separately, but her doctor that she went to was closest to where my mom and my dad lived. So they allowed her to come and stay with us until she got ready to have the baby. I'm working, at this place, really nasty place, but I made really good money, right? So the weekend before she had the baby, I got paid, and I went and I bought her everything she needed: blankets, bottles, diapers, clothes, whatever she needed. I cleaned it. I spent my entire paycheck and made sure she had everything she needed. So the baby comes, and she comes home, and she stays with us for a couple of days because we're thinking we're going to get back together. We're going to make it work. We're going to get, And I go to work one day. I can't remember what day. I think it was a Saturday. I never forget it. I'm thinking, well, I did forget it. But I think it was a Saturday, and I go to work, and I come home, and everything that I bought and gone. Wife, gone. Baby, gone. And so I walk into the house, and my mom is sitting on the couch, and she's in tears. She's bawling. She's, and I say, Mama, what's wrong? She says, she gone. She left. Her mother was a huge influence on her. Her mother and her auntie, huge influence. So I come home. Nobody calls me and tells me nothing. I just come home to an empty house. That moment was a clarifying moment in my life, and it made everything that I hadn't dealt with worse, if that makes sense. So I call her up. I say, well, what happened? Well, Mom, wanted me to come and be back home so they can keep an eye on us, this and that, and the third. I did. You could have told me that that's what's going to happen. So we split up, this and that, and it was just okay. So a year or so later, we got back together, and that was just, we did it for the sake of the children. I tell anybody, and that's just one of the things I live by. Never get back or stay with somebody for the sake of children. It doesn't work, because there's a level of resentment that sets up. There's a level of resentment that everybody goes through, and it's unspoken, right? So we got back together, and we ended up moving to Charlotte, and it was just a disaster. Just a complete disaster. I ended up leaving her. Long story short, like I said, it's the recap, right? Long story short, ended up leaving her. I started dating this older lady. In the series, her name is Minnie Pearl, right? So you have to kind of listen to this. You have to go back, listen to the first 10 episodes to find out who I'm talking about. Minnie Pearl was just crazy. She was I can't remember. She was 24 years older than me. I didn't know this when I first got with her. I didn't find this out until her birthday came around. So and that particular stage of my life, my manhood was being challenged. I know I struggled emotionally, right? But I always knew that I was a man. At least within me, I thought I was a man. But the struggle was I allowed someone else to tell me that I wasn't. If that makes, you know what I'm saying? I allowed someone else to tell me that I wasn't a man. And that played a part. Again, all I'm doing now, and we all go through it, I'm just compounding one trauma on top of another trauma on top of another trauma. Stayed with this woman for 5 years. We fought. We went back and forth. One of the biggest stories, and I said this, I think it was in episode 2 or 3, and I said that the one story that I can give you that messed up my whole world with her was we went down to her daughter's house, and we got into an argument, and she always belittled me, especially in front of her daughter. Right? Her daughter was 6 months older than me, so she would always belittle me in front of her, and so she was like, "Yeah, you think you're a man? You ain't no man." I mean, it's one thing to feel it. It's one thing to be ostracized or castrated. It's one thing to think that you're being castrated. It's another thing to be told that you're being castrated. It's another thing for someone to say, "Yeah, bro, you suck." You're not a man. You're not as much of a man you think you are. I was like, dang, that was devastating. That was torture. So you had to check out episode 3 and 4 to get that one. Me and her ended up splitting up, and I met my second wife. She lived in Jacksonville. With her, there's so many different stories about that. You have to go back and listen to. Episodes 4, 5, and 6 to kind of get that. It was a really, 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 really hard time for me. And all of this still coupled at the fact that I'm mad at my mother. You know what I'm saying? So speaking of that, by the time with my second wife, we got married in 2003. We went through a whole bunch of stuff. It was an omen. The day we got married was an omen, and it should have been don't. So what happened was we got married on her birthday in 2003. And we woke up, we had a snowstorm or an ice storm. And where I'm from, that's not good because nobody drives on the ice or in snow because we don't hardly get it. And so when we do get it, it's a complete train wreck, right? So, but I tell you who was working that day, the utility folks. They were working that day because as soon as we got up, our water was cut off, so we had no water. So we couldn't take a shower, we couldn't do anything. So good thing we had money, so we didn't have a car though. So guess what I had to do? I had to walk to the utilities department, pay the water bill, wait for them to come back out to cut our water back on. And, ain't nobody in this house. Wait. Sorry about that, y'all. I walked back home. I walked back home to let her know, hey, the water bill paid, to cut the water on back on. And she was like, I still want to get married. So we didn't know because of the snowstorm. We didn't think that the magistrate was open. So we called to the courthouse, told the magistrate, hey, we want to get married. Magistrate came in late. So we ended up having to walk to the magistrate's office to get married, which is about 1.5 miles, maybe 2. So we walked in the snow to get married. All of this should have been an omen. Like, no, don't do it. But no, it took. So we get married, and it was just my second marriage wasn't as bad as my first because my first I had no experience. I didn't know what I was doing in my first marriage. Second marriage wasn't that bad. I was still trying to find myself though as a man. I was still trying to grow up as a man, and I still struggled in that arena. I was bad with money. That's a running theme that you will find out starting in episode 12. I was bad with money, and I just made a lot of financial bad decisions, bad choices. Because I always correct myself when I say decisions, because anything you do more than once is not a decision. It's no longer a decision; it's a choice. You chose to do it, and we ended up divorcing. It took us a while to get divorced. There's a lot of stories in there because I moved to Illinois for her. Listen to chapter 9. I'll tell you about that one. Went up there to be with her. She had already told me what the skinny was. I didn't hear what she said because I wanted to hear what I wanted to hear. And I spent 4 years in Illinois being destroyed. However, I realized though, it was my fault because it was self-inflicted. I stayed there 3 years, I stayed there 3 years, 364 days too long because I should have been gone the first day. But, and then, it's just one of those things. But that's where the story ends. That's where chapter 10 ends. There's so many different stories in those chapters. I had to condense it into 23 minutes right here. But you have to check out the podcast to get the full gist of what I've been through. These are just recaps. It's just a recap. The struggle was so real and it hurt so bad, and I went through so much. But starting in chapter 12, though, you're going to see the transition from my second wife to my third. I've been married 3 times. Just in case you keeping count. 3 times I've been married. But it's a pretty interesting story. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know nobody came through here on YouTube, but it's okay. It's okay. But everybody else, thank you for listening on the podcast. You can check us out on all podcast platforms, buzzsprout.com, and any other platform. Check me out on podpage.com as well. That's where my website sits. You guys have been great. Thank you for all the support. I love you very much. We'll see you next time.